Thank you, Aaron, for that kind introduction, and just to reassure you, I'm still a very humble person. It's just a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? Humble Vice-Chancellor, it's a bit like civil engineer. It's great to be here and to learn how to use the visual aids. As Aaron has hinted, I want to talk a bit today about the changing focus that OFFA has, which particularly affects the student retention and success area. We have been charged by the Minister to give greater challenge to institutions and at the same time a greater support, and I hope you're feeling both of those in our new guidance. We've also been asked by the Minister to work jointly with the Higher Education Funding Council for England on widening participation, access and student success issues, and I hope by the end of these two presentations you'll see that indeed we are working closely together on a joint strategy. There is a renewed emphasis on outcomes following the latest guidance last year by the Minister to OFFA, and that includes access, retention and student success. We're also encouraging much greater evaluation of the impact of the measures that institutions put in place in terms of access and student success. Our latest guidance very clearly emphasises the importance of outreach activity and of the need to involve students in the development of access agreements, and emphasises the importance of equality and diversity issues. But I want to focus this morning, fairly obviously because of the nature of the conference, on the relatively new focus which was first included in access agreements for 2012-13 on student success. And indeed it is true that for a number of institutions they have been remarkably successful, as you've just seen from Seth's slides, in terms of widening participation. And the challenge for them very often is in student success of those widening participation students. Others have been less successful in widening participation, and their challenge is very much in the outreach area, because they say the reason they haven't been successful is because they don't get the applications. So we are encouraging them to engage in more outreach activity. I've got a quote here from Kathy Engstrom that appeared in Change magazine in 2008, and it says, "Access without support is not opportunity. We shortchange our students if we encourage them to come into higher education and do not support their particular needs there." And I guess people have come to this particular conference because they get that one and know that it is important to support students to be successful. You can see that increasingly institutions are devoting some of their access agreement contributions to student success. In 2011-12, there was just one figure for both retention and outreach expenditure. As I say, from 2012-13 access agreements, we asked people to identify what they were spending on promoting student success. And you can see a steady rise in the amount of money which is being spent on retention and indeed on outreach activity. And by the time the new system matures in 2016-17, institutions tell OFFA that they will be spending some £102 million every year on retention and supporting student success. Helpful as that sum is, it's still a small portion of the total sum that will be spent by 2016-17 on access and widening participation. Institutions tell us, including the contribution of the National Scholarships Programme, that some £809.5 million will be spent on access and widening participation activity by 2016-17. But the predictions are that the expenditure will move in the directions that OFFA has suggested. there's a shift in line with OFFA guidance in terms of a greater spend on student retention, a greater spend on outreach, and a reducing spend on financial support to students relatively, although the absolute amount, as you saw, will continue to rise. The emphasis that on evaluation, and you've seen some of the excellent tools that are now around for evaluation. I guess that as I go around universities and know that universities are all research-led or research-informed in the work that they do, then I'm surprised sometimes that the £809.5 million they're proposing to spend isn't always as strongly supported by research and evaluation as you might expect. Some of that, of course, is because of the challenges of actually making that evaluation and the need for a national input into that. And OFFA is looking to work together with partners, including the Funding Council and certainly institutions, to help provide that national base, because we need to know what the effect of the large expenditure that we are spending on access and widening participation is on actual student performance. And of course, if we're going to have an emphasis on outcomes, then we need to know what progress is being made towards the targets, and use that information to inform decisions on future spend. And we're getting strong encouragement from the Minister to do that. He wants us to discover what works and what doesn't, and to concentrate our resources there. And our guidance is based on what we believe works. We're looking forward to working with the sector to find out more information about what works and what's been successful, to spread good practice and to support you in that good practice, and to partner with HEFGI in that. One important source of information about what works is the elegantly named WASDA's archive. This is a Higher Education Academy archive on widening access, student retention and success, which gives the acronym. And it contains some important legacy information from past projects. It's based on learning from the Aim Higher initiative, which I know many people in this room were engaged with, from the lifelong learning networks, the work of Action on Access, and indeed, important to our discussion today, the work of What Works, the HEFGI and Paul Hamlin supported program, which looked at student retention and success. And if I had a pointer, I could point out all of those reports for you in that list, but you'll find them all in that particular website that hosted by the Higher Education Academy. And what that information shows is that, not surprisingly, we have a diversity of students, and they have a diversity of issues. The What Works Paul Hamlin HEFGI funded report, which incidentally followed on some severe criticism of the sector by the National Audit Office, showed that around 8% of students withdraw in their first year, but a much larger group, some 37%, or 42%, or 33%, or 39%, according to the various projects that have been on it, have considered withdrawing. I guess it depends whether you catch a student on a Monday or a Friday when you ask that question, but there are a greater number of students who've considered withdrawing than who actually do withdraw. And there are usually multiple reasons for withdrawing. All of those of us who worked in this area know that it's not easy to identify a single reason why a student withdraws. They give an average of 2.1 reasons. I do love calculators, don't you? When they discuss why they withdrew. Most consider leaving in the first semester just after Christmas. Most of them cite a lack of engagement in various ways. And engagement is built by staff-student contact, and maybe in larger classes with a great emphasis on a research output, that has become more difficult. They place an emphasis on active learning, the engagement of the students as a co-producer of their own learning. They place an emphasis on prompt feedback. I want to know how I'm doing. I want to get that encouragement of knowing that I'm on course and I'm doing well. An important reason for students staying on course, of course, is time on task. And that is threatened if you've got financial challenges and you're needing to work a lot for income. Sometimes it relates to the high expectations that either students or their parents have. There is a need to have a respect for the diverse learning styles of students. There is a great diversity now amongst our students, and they all learn in different ways. And there is a need to encourage cooperation amongst students. In some of our universities are very competitive places, yet we do need for people to understand the importance of cooperation as well as competition. And the What Works model for engaging students suggests it's important to have early engagement, which includes pre-entry as well as induction events, and I'm glad we've got some people talking about that today. That students are informed, they understand their course structure, the university procedures, what's expected of them, so they can perform better. And pre-entry information, advice and guidance is important in this, and we need to recognise the paucity of IAG now in our schools and colleges sector. The need for academic interaction. Staff need to understand and interact with students. We need to understand that the friendships which are formed in the early days of a course are very important in the academic context. We need actually to actively support students as they develop that capacity to engage. Some students don't feel the need to engage. This may be particularly true of a mature student who has many other commitments, maybe family commitments, and they may have an approach that they don't need friends. In fact, they do, maybe as much as any other student. And of course, students may engage at different levels. Some engage at the institution level, the department level, the course level, the module level. And that means that the challenge to engage with students is a challenge for all of the staff in the higher education institution and not just an individual tutor. And it is an issue that senior management need to take seriously in the university, because institutional management and coordination can have a big impact on the engagement of students and student success. Above all, what universities need to do, these reports say, is to foster a sense of belonging. And that comes through in a variety of ways, including curriculum design and teaching and the environment. Student engagement and support are all crucial to that sense of belonging. And specific groups face specific issues, and we've seen some of that as regards the locations from which students come from. If we'd have shown a slide about student success broken down by ethnicity, then we would have seen an even starker identification that BME students underperform compared to the expectation, particularly black students, and the HEA have done quite a lot of work on this particular challenge. Now, one of the issues that we can't escape is the issue that most of the money that institutions are spending on access and promoting widening participation is going on bursaries or fee waivers. We actually don't have any evidence that bursaries or fee waivers support student success. Very early days, of course, to know anything about the impact of fee waivers, since they've only come in with the £9,000 fees, but the evidence that we have about bursaries under the £3,000 fees is they didn't affect student choice, of course, but we don't know if they made an impact on student retention. That's an important area for us to evaluate, since so much money is being spent on that aspect of access agreements. In particular, financial support may be important for mature students. Very often they've made substantial financial sacrifices to become students, and they may have a greater set of commitments than some of the younger cohort of students. And it's noticeable that non-completion rates for mature students are over 2 times greater than those for younger students. Indeed, 34% of mature students consider suspending their studies, and 22% of mature students leave their course altogether. And they list financial problems as one of the top 2 reasons. And given the other challenges that mature students face, we can't ignore that evidence on the financial front. Well, as I mentioned, we are working together with HEFGI and institutions and other partners on a national strategy on access and student success. We're looking hard to find out what works best. We're drawing on that information in the WASA's archive, on the work of the Paul Hamlin HEFGI-funded What Works project, and indeed on new research by ourselves and by others, some of which you've seen in the preceding presentation. And it's important that we target our access and our student success measures to do more of what works, so that we get ourselves into a virtuous circle of improvement. I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to be with you this morning, because I recognise around this room, and doubtless people tuning into these sessions, have made significant contributions to widening participation and student success. Many institutions have made really significant improvements, as we saw in the last few years, in widening participation. The challenge now is to ensure that those new students who come into higher education from those particular backgrounds are not disadvantaged when they're students, and that they're successful and they enjoy the life-transforming experience of higher education and go on to be successful and fruitful citizens. Thank you for the contributions that you make in that amazing task.